Kia ora all, and welcome back to the Huddy for episode 7. We had a break last week, but we're back tonight, and exciting news is that we are roughly about 2 weeks away from competition games, and also there are some pre-season games happening over the next 2 weeks. And Adam, it's good to have you as always. It's getting quite exciting now.
Well, I missed you last week, Brad. It's very exciting that rugby is imminent. June 20 is the date for the competition proper in Wellington. But of course, there will be a series of pre-season fixtures to indulge in on the previous Saturday.
Exactly right, Adam. And no, it's exciting times for all in the sporting community coming up. And of course, tonight we have got a special guest. He is one of the up-and-coming rugby locks in the Wellington region, and his rugby story is quite unique. And welcome Hugo Plummer to the Huddy Hui tonight. What did you learn about life during the lockdown?
How's it going, guys? Lockdown, you sort of find out a bit about yourself, don't you? When you're stuck, isolated by yourself. It was just me and my mum and dad. So stuck by yourself, you sort of find out what you're interested in, because that's the only thing you end up doing, isn't it? And you sort of realize what you miss as well. So, not being able to play rugby, it really gets you after 4 weeks, doesn't it?
Yeah, it certainly does.
And what are some of the interests outside of rugby?
Pretty big one for me is my uni degree. So I'm studying law, and it takes up a lot of my time. So you have to enjoy it, don't you? I just find it's a pretty good switch up from rugby, and just a really good challenge for my mind.
What kind of law are you studying, or is it just general law at this stage?
Yeah, so at the moment, I'm just in my second year. So we're sort of going a little bit more in depth into each kind of law at the moment. And then we'll sort of find our interest from there. And then we sort of get more into the passionate side of it in the upcoming years.
How was study during the lockdown?
Vic actually gave us a 4-week holiday, which was nice of them. So I was actually able to relax a little bit and take time off and just focus on getting ready for rugby, really.
A 4-week holiday and an only child. Life's good for you, Hugo.
Oh, it's not. Oh, my brother's not here. I was lucky to have not have my brother here, so I got to have more of the food that we bring home. But but we've still got like full on weeks now of uni. There's no real breaks now up until exams. So.
Tell us about your time at Onslow College and what inspired you to study law and pursue professional rugby.
So yeah, I guess I do have a pretty unique story with Onslow. So just the rugby side of things. So we're a co-ed school, so we don't really have that roll through of just constant players coming through, but it's such a passionate community while you're there. It's the amount of dedicated coaches and managers, that I've had coming up. I just enjoyed my rugby. Playing there, I really just was playing it for the fun of the game. Playing with my mates every week, just trying to represent my school. That's what it was all about, I wasn't thinking too much ahead of time. So I really enjoyed Onslow for that reason. And then for the law side of things, I was really tossing it up. I didn't quite know what I wanted to do with my life. I was doing 3 science papers, and then turns out I'm not using any of them now. I just enjoyed arguing. So I was like, oh, well, law sounds like something for me.
Who are some of those mentors at Onslow College?
Oh, well, I've had quite a few coaches growing up that were really good. But in my first year of first 15, Dallas Patonu took our first 15 to a Div 3 championship, which we hadn't done in a while. So he was a really inspiring coach for me. Just made me feel pretty welcome in the first 15, and it felt like I was starting to get into proper rugby.
And proper rugby for you started in the first 15 at Onslow College. When did you feel like you were at a level where you could reach a high performance program?
Yeah, so rugby, it was a huge passion for me, but it wasn't really I wasn't thinking in terms of career-wise until halfway through maybe 2018. So it was really when I got invited to the Hurricanes under-18 camp. That's when I sort of realized, hey, I could make something out of this. If I really put the effort into it, I can maybe make this a career in the future.
So speaking about the high performance program, Hugo, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted rugby, but how has that impacted the high performance program at Wellington Rugby? Has it changed during the lockdown or post the lockdown?
I mean, COVID has changed a lot of things, but in terms of how the academy, the high performance unit conducts themselves, it's pretty consistent. The amount of workout plans that were sent through by Joel for us to do conditioning, gym programs as well, and then with Matty Higgins, with nutrition, we pretty much were getting the same information that we were getting right beforehand, and we're doing Zoom calls to analyze previous Lions games. So we were honestly just getting a lot of knowledge, a lot of information given to us during that time. And then coming out of it now, we're sort of just trying to get back into the stride of things, same as usual.
I just want to go back to Onslow College, Hugo. You were one of the better players at that school. What was it like carrying the burden of being one of the more prominent personalities in the team and then going into a high performance environment where everybody's equal to you or better than you?
Oh, I definitely was not carrying my Onslow team. I could tell you I've had dozens of players each year that really, it's a team game. And when you're at Onslow, you've got some quality players. I invite anyone to go down to Onslow College and watch a rugby game there because you've got some quality players all the way through the team. So I'm definitely not carrying anything there. I think the big changeover for me was being a leader at the Onslow team and then sort of coming into like Tawa and to high performance where I'm sort of like the baby of the group again and sort of having to learn my place again. So I can't chat all I want. I'm sort of got to start at the bottom again.
And with that chat, how do you best communicate on the field? Are you someone who talks slowly or talks aggressively? Are you a big talker or are you someone that leads more by example?
Well, it's something I've got to improve on, I reckon, and for my leadership is talking on the field. I try and keep a cool head because usually it's a fast-paced game. You need your captain or your leader to give that good advice with a cool head. And when you get to the level I'm playing right now with Tawa Prems and the high performance games, every player is a quality player. So you're leading from the front by just performing your role. Everyone else around you knows what they're doing and is playing great rugby around you. So yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned about the high performance program of that sense. Last year, Hugo, you were in the Wellington under-19 side, which was a very impressive side, but you also were the captain of that side. So what was the experience of being a captain in a national rugby tournament?
So it's sort of what I was saying before about it was a leadership, but definitely a different kind of leadership to what I've done before, because you've got players like Tane Plumtree, Josh Southwell. I could name the whole team here. They're ridiculously good players. So like you don't need to lead from the front or carry from the front when you've got everyone performing their role as like a quality player, and they're all leaders themselves. They know how to conduct themselves. They can give advice to the team. So, I mean, my role in that team was really, I guess, giving a good chat before the game and just maintaining the cool head in the huddle, I guess.
Of course, one of the influential figures in that side was your coach, Dion Waller, of course, who's been heavily involved in the Tawa Rugby Club over the years. Tell us about his influence.
Dion's a bit of a character, isn't he? He's a great coach just because he'll push you really hard. He pushed the under-19 team like to our limit, but if he's pushing you hard, it's just because he wants to get the best out of you. So, but yeah, his attention to the detail as well, great. So he's I can't say much more than he's just a really good coach, isn't he? That's why he's with Wellington now as a coach.
Tawa's season last year was a dramatic one. 17-0 up in a semi-final against Norths, and it slipped away. What would you change in hindsight about that semi-final?
Yeah, they turned out to be a bit of a bogey team last year. I think we lost 3 times to them. So,
yeah.
I mean, I haven't thought much about it. Sort of try to put that on in the past. Definitely from my point of view, of what I could do for my game there is Norths is always a physical team, and if you're not matching up physically against them, then they're going to try and walk over the top of you, which they did to me a couple of times that game.
How daunting was the physicality of Swindale Shield and Jubilee Cup rugby last year? It's well and good being in the high performance and lifting weights and eating the right foods, but until you confront these men, what's that like for a young guy like yourself?
It took me a while. It took me a while to like really reach my stride in terms of adult rugby, because the physicality is nothing like I'd ever experienced. So Swindale was a bit of a shock. Those first few games, they were really tough. I was getting a few niggles, but by the time you get around to Jubilee Rugby and you sort of just, your body gets used to it, it gets better, you know. I felt like I was playing better rugby by the time we reached Jubilee Cup.
What were the highlights of the Tawa season last year for you?
There was a time during the Jubilee Cup when we were really riding high. I think we were on the top of the table at one point during that time. The highlight for me personally was probably that Petone game, that Jubilee Cup opener. I think I got the 3 points for that player of the game from the ref. And I think that sort of just showed me that I belonged in this kind of level of rugby, like the premier level of rugby. So that was in the mud and rain. I was just glad that I could play a forwards game and sort of get a little bit of recognition for it. It was quite nice. And
that particular game, you went down 14-0.
Yeah. But we won in the end, so that's all that counts to me. Bit of a late start, but it's all right.
So Hugo, the Tawa Rugby Club, like most rugby clubs, it's community focused. But when Adam and I have been to the Tawa Rugby Club to commentate games over the last few years, the hospitality there is fantastic. And one compliment that, you know, the community does really well there is the aftermatch, is that actually you guys as the premier players actually bring the food over and ask you to participate in the aftermatch festivities. And that's a fantastic attribute for the clubs. And how much is the sense of being involved with the Tawa community stress for the players?
Well, that's exactly why I went to this club, because I knew right from the outset that this is what they're about. A bit of respect after the game, getting all of us young guys to go and give out the meals. I think it's just important that Tawa and in your club game is about the community. So your community showing up and you're sort of role models in your community. So yeah, of course it's important. They tell us how to conduct ourselves, make sure that we're doing the right things. But yeah, it's hugely important.
And who are the personalities in the Tawa team that you get along with the best?
Oh, there's a couple. Sidovini won't like me saying this, but he's sort of taking me under his wing. Sorry. In terms of the forward pack, I like hearing him rap in between scrums. He likes to engage in a little bit of rapping with the other team. But we're just full of young, talented players. Kimra just acts like a general out there. So yeah, there's just a bunch of players that are really quality.
Are you like Peniasi in that you can smoke before the game and still play well?
Oh, I couldn't, but he's right with how he dominates players on the field, doesn't he?
He's a formidable unit, that's for sure. I want to talk to you about the rules briefly, Hugo. You're a lawyer. You understand the game. If there was one law you could change in rugby, what would it be and why? And what did you make of those new law variations introduced to Super Rugby, with a extra time being introduced if the game is drawn, and also the abolition of the complete send-off with the red card?
That's heavy. I think personally around the tackle, I don't know if it's speaking as a taller person, so it's difficult for me, but they're constantly trying to lower the height of the tackle. And I think from experience from coming from Onslow and coming from a place where you've got a little bit of less experience, at least, a lot of problems around head clashes with the knee, I find. It's not those head clashes with the head that causes those concussions. So I think tackling up high, although it's not good, and sometimes it is around the neck, just forcing people to tackle at the knees and around that area, it can be, it's still just as dangerous. So I think that needs to be evaluated a little bit more. In terms of Super Rugby, I've had a look at the rules, but I can't remember much about them. with the red card, I think it's a good idea in terms of, because for the fans, I mean, there's not many games that are going to be played, so you will sort of want to make the most of them. And we've seen in a couple of games in the past few seasons how red cards have just ruined the game, especially with the increase, I guess, in how much they're being handed out.
Yeah, totally agree with that one, Hugo. Of course, there was that Hurricanes home game earlier this season before all the events of the world started to happen, where Geordie Barrett was red carded. Plus, also there were 2 yellow cards at the time. That was against the Blues, and that had a massive impact on the game. And it's a very valid point you raised there about making sure that we are keeping fans engaged within the code itself. About lineouts in general, Hugo, tell us about what are some of the your key attributes as a lineout player, some of the key calls that you are well known for within your team, and what will it take for you as a lock going forward, not only to get into the NPC, but into further representative honours, whatever Super Rugby or that's going to look like in the future?
So with lineouts, I sort of thought I knew a lot coming out of college, but pretty much every single season, every training, you realize how much you don't know. So it's a real complex. It's more complex than lots of people think in terms of what you need. Obviously, my height's an advantage, but in terms of explosiveness through my legs and speed across the ground, those are 2 huge things that I've still got a long way to go in terms of reaching a high intensity, a high performing line out. I've still got a long way to go in terms of that. And then what was that about taking it further?
So pushing on into Mitre 10 Cup or NPC and Super Rugby or whatever the next level of professional rugby is going to look like. What do you need to do to go to that next level?
There's a few things that I know I have to tick off. A big one for me is sort of my body composition. So a big part of that next level rugby is just the physicality and intensity. So having my body in the right position in terms of fitness and just having good muscle mass, that's hugely important for being able to play week in, week out, taking those hits.
That's what they say to me as well, Hugo, and I'm 34. Now, I want to ask you something quite serious, and that is the world is in a very strange time. Not only is there the coronavirus pandemic, but also very serious race protests in the United States and even here in New Zealand. Rugby is a multicultural sport. I wondered if you'd encountered any racism in your time in rugby and what you make of the whole George Floyd situation.
Well, okay. In my time in rugby, I've been surrounded by really good communities. So I haven't, obviously I'm not going, me myself, I haven't experienced anything bad towards me, but usually I'm part of rugby communities that really take just respect for other people seriously. So I haven't encountered that myself in Onslow or in Tawa. It's really great there. And just touching on like the wider worldview, I think we can all agree that this issue is hugely important. I think I don't have to say much more than that in terms of it's a really important issue. And I mean, what's happening in the world is proving that we really need to have a sit-down discussion about what's going on.
That's definitely right, Hugo. And of course, the rugby community in New Zealand are key drivers within our communities and society to continue the good change to promote equality for all. Hugo, thank you very much for coming on the Huddy Hui tonight. We, both Adam and I, are looking forward to seeing not only Tawa and yourself, but all the other rugby clubs around Wellington and around the country getting back on the rugby field. It has been a very long time.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
No worries. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Cheers.
Well, Adam, we've had a few Wellington-based rugby players on the show so far, but Hugo is a very intelligent young man with a very much a promising future.
A very thoughtful and engaging chat with Hugo. Some lovely replies there, not only about his rugby ambitions, but also his considerable intellect. And it's important that rugby players of his age are thinking beyond the parameters of the field, because if they don't, then the reality for them may be very grim.
Well,
Sounded like a school teacher there, didn't I?
yeah, it's good. You might do well in the classroom.
Take your job.
Well, you probably could. Anyway, so there's a big news just announced overnight. Actually during the night, is Wellington Rugby have released the format for the season. Of course, earlier in the week they announced two options. Option A, which was for every club to play each other and then a shortened final series, and then option B, which was a bit more condensed even further. And most clubs have gone for option A. So could you tell us about that situation, Adam?
So basically, 14 clubs were presented two options for the competition. Option one was a full Swindale Shield, 13 weeks. Everybody plays everybody, and then there's a semi-final and a final to decide the winner of the Jubilee Cup. The second option was two groups of 7 with 3 crossover matches. The Duckworth-Lewis system, convoluted, shortened, complicated. And so thankfully sanity has prevailed and option one has been preferred. And there are a number of advantages with option one, Brad. The Wellington Lions availability may not be as prominent in option one as it would be option two, but the Wellington Lions in reality haven't been a part of the final series in club rugby for a long time. So that's a red herring. We get 3 weeks extra rugby, and that's important because that's 3 more opportunities for players pushing for the Wellington Lions to prove themselves. That's 3 more weeks to engage people at all levels to participate in the game. And that's 3 more weeks of potential bar takings and other revenue fundraising opportunities for the club. So level 1 all kicks off on June the 20th. The actual draw has yet to be established, but a wonderful return to every team playing every one. I remember when the format was changed.
Yeah, last year.
But it was also changed in 2015, and you had a pathetic scenario where Huddle Boys Marist and Wainui contested the Jubilee Cup final that year, and the next year they didn't even play each other once. And that to me was totally unsatisfactory. So 14 weeks for the Swindale Shield, and that's a fantastic result because everybody plays everybody. And I guess from that we can have a true champion.
Oh, exactly right. We saw sort of the situation with the Swindale Shield last year, which was a bit washy-washy, and saw 2 of our big clubs actually end up in the Hardham Cup, and that was just the way the draw and the structure had been created. But we're all looking forward to finally seeing rugby.
I wouldn't call it wishy-washy. It was just a very competitive competition, and remarkably what you had in the final round of the Swindale Shield were 6 teams who could potentially have finished tied on 31 points. That didn't materialise. What materialised is Old Boys University posted a century against Parramatta Plymouton and missed out because Batoni rallied from a deficit at halftime to defeat Pornecki, but Pornecki hung on grimly for the bonus point. Marist and Pats won by a fortune as well, but had lost too many games in the early rounds. But the other reason why option 2, in my view, was unsatisfactory is because the pools were going to be established on last year's rankings, and the composition of each of the teams is going to look very different this year as opposed to 2019. And a team like Norse, the reigning champions, they might have had a relatively straightforward run, whereas a very strong team like MSP, who won the Hardham Cup last year, might have had a very difficult run. And the other reason why the seeding format was unsatisfactory is that the teams who finished towards the bottom end of the table last year are effectively being penalised for facts that are irrelevant in 2020.
Exactly right, yeah. And so, I think that's the good choice that the clubs have gone for option A. And having those extra few weeks is going to be a little extra financial gain for the clubs as well, to have a few people coming into their club rooms and having a beer, which is what the game of rugby at the community level is about, Adam.
Precisely. So the right call was made. And the other reason why I'm in favour of option 1 is a guy like Campbell Woodmass last year played himself into the Wellington Lions.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
On the basis of his form in the finals. Now, if the Wellington Lions are available to play Club Rugby at the same time last year, then Campbell Woodmass is not playing for Norths because TJ Perenara is playing for Norths. Now, that's fantastic, but you can't have it both ways. And the best option in this scenario was to try and encourage as much rugby as we possibly can, to involve as much the community as we possibly can, and therefore another 3 weeks was logical.
Exactly.
And I love rugby anyway. Why would I go for a sanitised option?
No, that's right. We've had enough of sanitisers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, it's we've had enough. And
you can see how much he's got on tonight.
Yeah, no, it's all that Lotus hand sanitizer. It goes pretty well. Makes me look like I'm a bit orange. Anyway, now, of course, over the weekend, Super Rugby announced some new variations in Super Rugby Aotearoa, I should say, because we don't call it Super Rugby because there's no Australian and South African sides. And there's been a few changes to how the game of rugby is going to go about it.
Well, the 3 significant changes, perhaps the most significant of them all, is the introduction of extra time to decide drawn games. There's nothing satisfying about a draw. A draw is like kissing your sister, as the old sporting cliche goes. Rugby league has had golden point of some variety since 1997. The golden point in the NRL started in 2003. There have been 129 golden point games. Only 16 of those have remained in a draw after the allotted 10 minutes of extra time. Penrith evidently have won the most games in golden point, 11. In a short competition, Hugo raised the point about making it as exciting as possible to give people as many reasons to watch the game as possible. And the other thing that makes this exciting is the New Zealand conference is so incredibly close. I mean, look at the conference situation before the lockdown. The Hurricanes had won 4 games and they were 4th. The Chiefs were first heading into the last round before the lockdown on that Friday night. They dropped to 3rd, and the Crusaders, who were 4th, they went up to 1st. And so golden point may be a way of resolving this very close situation that is likely to emerge in the New Zealand conference. In fact, I was laughing with a friend of mine from Christchurch the other day. I'd love to see the Crusaders win more games and lose the championship on bonus points.
Well, the exciting thing actually about golden point, Adam, is it brings back the importance of the drop goal, which New Zealanders tend to not be the greatest advocates for the drop goal. Super Rugby, we could see the importance of that coming into fray.
Well, I'm not a big advocate of the drop goal either. Johnny Wilkinson kicked 36, Daniel Carter 8, and yet people were trying to claim that Johnny Wilkinson's the greatest first 5 of all time. How many test tries did you score, Johnny Wilkinson? 8 compared to Carter's 29. How many test tries did you set up compared to Daniel Carter? But it does place an emphasis on a different skill in the game, which is exciting. The other thing it does do, though, is that it encourages teams in regulation to take more risks.
Yeah, it does.
And it also is a test of stamina for those teams that aren't able to separate themselves after 80 minutes. They have to endure the attrition of battling away for another 10. And of course, the other reason to celebrate the introduction of the golden point situation is you think about rugby league and how many incredibly exciting games that they've had with the golden point rules. And who could ever forget that all Queensland grand final?
Oh, yes.
North Queensland Cowboys against the Brisbane Broncos. Jonathan Thurston, arguably the greatest player of his generations, hits the goddamn post with the final conversion attempt, and then he kicks the drop goal in extra time to win the game in his first premiership for the Blokes in Townsville. That's the passion, that's the excitement, that's the unpredictability we want to witness, and having a draw just defeats that. If you want to have a draw, go and play cricket for 5 days.
Exactly right. And Jonathan Thurston won me a lot of money at the TAB with that grand final. But the Cowboys.
He bought that suit with it.
I certainly did. There we go. Rod and gun. Good outfits if you want to buy them. Anyway, a few other rules, of course, is the red card. Okay, there's a change there. So if the player gets red carded in Super Rugby Aotearoa, they can be replaced by a player in their team after 20 minutes. What do you think of that change?
I'm a big fan of that change too. I'm not trying to be an NZR PR person, but the reality is that rugby has a serial card problem. In 2016, there were 94 cards in Super Rugby. That went up to 143 and 141 games in 2017. At last year's World Cup, there were 8 red cards, which was double the record previous number of 4 way back in 1987.
That's right.
And the proliferation of cards at the Rugby World Cup went from 21 in 2011 to 52 in 2015. Now, I understand and support safety measures to make the game more tolerable for participants, but the All Blacks played the British Lions in 2017, 3 tests, the most eagerly anticipated fixtures on earth. They played 65 minutes, nearly an entire test match with 14 players. I'm not saying that Sonny Bill Williams
Wellington,
didn't deserve to be sent off. Sonny Bill Williams absolutely had to be removed from the game for that foul. But what these new rule changes are saying is that it's effectively a double yellow card, having 20 minutes off for a red, and the player who's committed the red card offence can't return. So there's an additional penalty too, which is a right thing, and that is if you lose a second 5, for example, and you've only got a prop on the bench, he might have to play second 5, and that's the challenge that occurs. And the other challenge that can occur after the offence is the meeting at the judiciary to resolve what further sanction might be required. Australian rules football has been going in Melbourne for over 100 years. It's easily the most popular sport in Australia. They've never had players sent off from the field, and it's worked for them, so why not for rugby?
Oh, exactly right. And this is the next rule change coming up with Super Rugby Aotearoa is around the ruck to allow faster play, but also to be stricter. And there's a few things here, Adam, as we're trying to make the game more exciting, but this could possibly increase the penalty count at the breakdown. Who knows? We won't see until the first lot of games of Super Rugby in a few weeks' time. But some of the ones here is the ball carriers will be allowed to make one dynamic movement after being tackled. Crawling is going to be penalised straight away. We've been calling out for that for a long time at Super Rugby level because it gets picked up at Club Rugby all the time. Tackles expected to roll away immediately. We're not supposed to know that in the direction of the sideline. Of course, the referee's number 1 priority at the tackle will be making sure that happens. And the other thing here too is most rugby fans will hopefully see this happen is the extra focus on the offside line, with defenders expected to be clearly onside to provide attacking teams more space. A few interesting changes here, but could these changes at the breakdown increase the penalty count?
Well, I think it's conceivable in the first few weeks while the players adjust to the new interpretations of the law. The one thing I do hope that these new laws don't promote is a return to those farcical experimental law variations that we had a few years ago, which totally ruined the NPC. As a referee, you might be better qualified to comment on the practical implementation of these laws. They sound good in sentiment, but the reality I'm uncertain about.
Exactly. These are generally common practices that referees get told to always monitor. In fact, at the top level, they're actually going to place more importance. How it's going to work, as Adam said, will come down to how the players adjust and how the referees read those interpretations. But it will be interesting to see if the penalty count does increase. So, of course, there was a few years ago, about 2 or 3 years ago, the community level of New Zealand rugby, where they were pushing across the country a lot more focus on penalising players at the breakdown to get them on their feet. Now, of course, what happened around the country in that year, those years ago, was actually the penalty counts rose and the cards, also yellow cards rose. So it will be very interesting, Adam.
Well, what's happened in rugby is a greater emphasis, rightly so, on the safety of the game. The collisions are harder, the injuries are more brutal, and the expectations around player management and preservation are much higher. But with that has come this lunacy with cards. 143 cards in 141 Super Rugby matches a few years ago that's an average of 1 per game. So that means every single game results in a player being removed from the equation for 10 minutes. If that's the case, then the team should be training for cards. And you can't tell me that the players have less of an understanding of the rules than what they did years ago, because these are highly paid professionals, not just playing the game, but with video analysis people, coaches. An incredible amount of effort goes in. And to have a trigger-happy card situation is detrimental. So the red card idea is an acknowledgement that rugby has a problem with cards, and it's also an acknowledgement that we can't let foul play go unsanctioned.
Exactly right. We'll be looking forward to seeing Super Rugby and how those interpretations, variations are implemented, and it will be interesting to have a talk about that once Super Rugby Aotearoa begins. Of course, today, one former All Black would have been 84 today. Of course, he died in 2017. The great man, Colin Meads, of course, New Zealand's greatest ever All Black, Pine Tree. It was his birthday on this day in history, 1936. And of course, my Year 9 Social Studies class, Period 2 today, what they learned about Adam was Colin Meads.
And so they should. That's a very patriotic act that you have performed there, Brad. I hope you get a good Aero report. Colin Meads, 1936. The first place he actually went on a national tour with New Zealand was Ceylon, now Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people know that. He played 361 first-class matches, which was the record until it was passed by Kevin Mialamu, 384. But Kevin Mialamu, with no disrespect, played a significant number of those matches from the bench. Colin Meads basically played in an era where there were no replacements, so all those 361 games he played were full matches in an overtly violent era. And the significance of Meads is not just his success over a long period of time with the All Blacks, but he essentially changed the way the game was played. He was the first of the rampant running lock forwards. He was additionally a fourth loose forward, and he became celebrated for his Kiwi manliness, I guess. It's almost a product of a bygone era now, the classic Kiwi bloke. But there's a famous story about Colin Meads playing for King Country late in his career against Wellington at Athletic Park, and the players were keen for a beer, and the kitchen at Athletic Park had closed, and there were several complainants knocking on the door, insisting on the delivery of beer. And it wasn't until Colin Meads knocked on the door that everybody had a beer. Now, that is an acknowledgement of a man who carried serious mana in New Zealand and the rugby community. R.I.P. Colin Meads.
Certainly agree, Adam. And I was one of the lucky people to actually meet Colin Meads. Rather unusual circumstances. In 2012, a group of mates and I were brought tickets to the Mangatanoka pre-season game, the Hurricanes versus the Crusaders. And on the Thursday, I got a call from Wellington Rugby. Of course, Wellington Rugby and the Hurricanes were literally the same thing at that time. And they said, Brad, we're really desperate. There's really no one else, but we know you're going to the game. I said, yes, I know I am. And they said, we can't, the guy that mainly is Captain Hurricane. The guy that is mainly Captain Hurricane is away. We can't find anyone else. We know you're going. You've got to be Captain Hurricane. And I said, okay, all right, I'll take this challenge on. And of course, in the middle of Mangatanoka, it's 30-odd degrees. You're wearing that Captain Hurricane head that's got the big nose and the big chin since been replaced.
That nose is taller than Hugo Plummer.
It certainly is. It's very heavy as well, too. And you had to wear all the clothing, which was like firefighter clothing. And, of course, it's sweaty as anything. And so the media manager at the time came up to me and said, right, well, your first task today is to welcome the people coming into the ground. And, of course, he said there'll be kids there. And then you got to wave. Don't talk. You're not allowed to say who you are or anything. Okay, that's all right. Well, the kids were actually drunk adults. Okay, as I'm standing there waving, and getting a whole lot of abuse thrown at you, as you do, they're all there for a good time. And there was one part where I got tackled by 3 guys, and one of them punched me in the balls. And so, Captain Hurricane rolling on the ground, he's looking rather sore. Of course, I turned to my right-hand side, and here's the police arrested them. So, that's right. And, of course, you went around the ground and invited people, and talked to them and all that, got more abuse. It was not going well, And so I had a bit of a break in the tent where all the players were, and the media manager came running in. He goes, no, you got to go. You got to get your costume back on. We've got to go. I said, okay, all right, put the costume on, went, run. And we get to this helicopter. And the helicopter's on, it's ready to go. And there's there's the pilot, and then there's 3 other people there. There was a father and his son, and the son was diagnosed with terminal cancer and was going to be the ball boy for the game. And he was going to come in on the helicopter and run out the ball. The other person was Colin Meads. And Colin Meads was going in the helicopter alongside Captain Hurricane and this kid. And so, Sir Colin, how you doing? It's Colin. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, Colin. That's right. And we get in the helicopter, and then we go up in the air. First time being in a helicopter. Frightening experience, okay? And it got worse. And Colin Meads is in the front seat of the helicopter next to the pilot. And the pilot goes, all right, we've got to do a few maneuvers over the ground. And, of course, the plane's flipping and going side to side and all this and going down doing the dunks. And I'm sitting there going, oh, God, like this. And I look over at Colin Meads, the toughest man in New Zealand and world rugby. And he's holding onto this bar at the front of the helicopter, and he's shaking with fear as well. And so I can tell you when that helicopter landed on halfway, just before the start of the game against the Crusaders, Colin Meads ran out. Captain Hurricane ran out as well. And here's this kid jumping up and down, having the time of his life. And that's my memory of Colin Meads meeting the great man.
Well, he was only human, and maybe this would work as a parting note for tonight's program. Nev McEwen, Wellington rugby legend, now a pastor at Palmerston North Prison. He shared at least 10 test matches with Colin Meads, and he was a pallbearer at the funeral, I understand, for Meads and Tikawiti, and he said it was appropriate because I held him up in all those tests.
We've lost a few All Black greats over the years. Of course, Sir Brian Lahore as well last year. That was a sad loss. So we are starting to lose some of the greats of All Black rugby back in those amateur days. So, Adam, thank you much. Thank you again for coming on the Huddy Hui, and hopefully it's level 1 next week. We might be able to take the show on the road. Who knows?
We'll take it to the East End on a student night.
Probably not good for a secondary teacher to go there. But we'll probably try and take it to a club around the show, maybe the Cambridge. So, but anyway, thank you all for joining it with Huddy Hui. Thank you to our guest, Hugo Plummer. We're looking forward to community sport in 2 weeks' time. Ciao for now.